Welcome to the Operation Move podcast. My name is Zoe, and this week we have another training talk with Kirsten. And the question that we're answering today is how to manage getting sick during a training block, whether that happens at the beginning, in the middle, or worst case scenario towards the end. And so we dive into that a little bit this week, and things should be a little bit more regular now, because as it turns out, when you get bronchitis, it's a little hard to record a podcast with no voice. But thankfully that's over now, mostly, and things should be back to normal.
Hey, there we are.
There we are.
How's your Friday?
I'm a little bit tired because today was the first day that I had 12 to do, which I could probably squeeze in after CrossFit, but it just makes it a little bit more stressy than I like it to be. So I did 3 before and then did the rest afterwards. So I got up at 3:30.
My goodness.
And so that's the first time that and it was also just one of those things where I probably could have gotten up just that, like 3:45 would probably have been fine. But it was just one of those things where I was like, I'll get there early because then I can do like the 3K warm up, and then I've been using the GHD machine to do like some reverse hypers and stuff while I'm there, and do all of that. And that way then, because as nice as it is to be able to run during the day, it's just nothing else gets done in the day.
Yeah.
Because by the time I faff around having coffees and then I go.
Oh, there's so many things to do.
And then I come back and then I'm really hungry and then I eat and it's like, now it's time to pick up kids. Okay, so that's all I did today.
You just lose productivity like it's going out of fashion, don't you?
Yeah. So I thought today it would be nice to sort of like square away some of the other things. So I'll just do all of that. But I'm like, gee, that's early.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how quickly you get out of the habit of doing that thing though? Like, you would have been up at 4:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning running.
Yeah, all the time.
Most mornings of the week, and not doing it for 3 weeks?
Yeah. And all of a sudden my body's like, what is this?
You crazy woman.
And it's like, and it was good. It was probably also that combined with what we were doing at the gym was good in terms of it being like strength stuff. But it was sort of like
matchy cups. Matchy.
It was like what? So it was sort of starting at like a heavy weight for hang power cleans for about like 5 reps, and then slowly building up to a heavy 1 rep max. And then going back the other way to doing 2 and 3 and taking the weight off. But after you've done all of that work, it starts like I was failing.
Yeah.
Left, right, center.
Jelly arms.
So mental though, because I would sort of like, I have a bit of a psychological barrier around 38 or 39 kilos. Because for ages that was my maximum, and I just could not hit 40 for love or money.
Yeah.
And I can do 40 now, but it's still one of those things that once I get above that weight, you just sort of like start doubting yourself. So I'd failed a couple of times, and so stripped it back down to something that I knew I could do, and just really focused on like, don't think about the weight, don't think about it. It doesn't feel heavy. This
engage
is fine.
All the right muscles.
And sort of like got up to 40, and then I was just like, my body was like, I don't know.
But then your arms are so fatigued by that point.
As well. And it is one of those things, I guess, with being more, like I would say generally that I probably do have a lot more slow twitch than fast twitch.
Yeah.
So, like I could do 35 probably 20 times if I needed to, but doing like 1 at 40 is really, really hard.
Yeah, that explosive power thing. I struggle with that too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So yeah, but yeah, like, so big sort of like explosive strength day, and then was doing like, had to do like this 30-second on, 2.5 minutes off thing, and I'm just supposed to be hitting like 5k pace for 30 seconds. I went and thinking, this will be easy, it's 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I can do anything.
And then like I'm kind of like doing it, I'm like, it's a little bit hard to get up to this pace this morning. The hamstrings are a little bit like, what are you doing? So yeah.
Don't forget you ran a marathon a couple of weeks ago.
I will sleep very, very well this evening. That is for sure. And my brother's in coming up for the weekend, so we've got like, it's also just a bit of a shock to the system with like, I've got to like be a parent and do stuff.
I know, yeah, you have 5 days off, and God,
it was like 7 days, so it was just like, it just was.
Oh, what's true, yeah.
And like, so now all of a sudden, like, Riley needs a hair trimmed on the weekend. We need to get a birthday present for a friend. Piper needs styrofoam balls for a project. Like, man, it's a big weekend.
So many chores.
I know.
Crazy. I've got a 16k run tomorrow morning, which I'm really looking forward to. But that's it's actually quite a civilized start time, 9:30. But it's in Canberra, so I have to get up 3 hours beforehand anyway, so that's all right.
Well, that makes a difference then, doesn't it, being it later in the day if you've got like a 3 hour
prep time.
That was my thing with, because I'd signed up for Jetty to Jetty, and I was like, at a minimum I would have to get up at 3.
Isn't that ridiculous?
For like, and like, I was like, I could run it, but I don't think I'm ready to drive for 5 hours. So
no.
Yeah, and that was sort of like the thing. It's like, oh, should I go, should I not go? Because I was just sort of starting to get better. And then I was like, it's that kind of drive. And then running just like that, like my coach wanted me to run 12 that day, not 21. So, yeah, I was like, yeah, that's just going to set me back.
Yeah. No, you got to take it easy. But you've got to... you can just allow the recovery to happen. I'm really excited. Like, I love the whole new training cycle.
Yeah.
So, it's endless possibilities and really exciting sort of stuff. But at the same time, teeny tiny little bit scared. I'm not just terrified, just a little bit, because new coach, going into a new training cycle, and it's
you do get it. You are sort of like in that recovery bubble a little bit, and it feels so safe and comforting. And
I haven't been following a plan for 2 months, and I've been doing my own thing. Run up a hill, that felt good, I'll do it 4 more times. Or hey, this feels a bit fast and it feels okay, so I'll just keep going and I'll make it or no energy, yep, that's it, done. It's an easy run today, or whatever. It's it doesn't it's a nice day, I'll go hit the trails or whatever. It doesn't it's kind of, there's you get into that into that security blanket sort of thing of only doing workouts that make you feel good on the day, so you're not challenging yourself necessarily on your day-to-day runs, but that was kind of the point. But coming back into the training cycle, I guess it's it's a little bit intimidating, and I don't know what it's going to be like.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of like,
until I get it and I know and I start, then I'll be. Yeah,
I mean,
be cool.
If it went on forever, you'd get bored.
Absolutely.
With doing your own stuff. But I can see that, like, the way my weeks have been building. Like this week, there's been like some more strides and some more hills, and nothing nothing really paced, but more like just sort of like adding in some leg speed and stuff like that, and have like a
just from starting to wake your legs up a little bit, just starting to get used to going back to working.
We'll head back into sort of like workout territory soon, which is fun, but also you have that added like conversation that you have to have with yourself when you look at it and go, oh, that looks scary. Whereas like when you're in sort of recovery mode, you don't have any of that. You're just like, oh, well, you know, like I'll
just see what it is, because every day is different, isn't it? Yeah. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, and it could be anything from a bad day of nutrition to just not enough sleep that sets you back, you know, a few days in your recovery, or maybe you went too fast, too hard, too soon or something, and your body's not quite ready. But so we'll see. But she said, oh, hills, now what have you got around you? And I said, well, within 2K of my house, you know, I've got a couple of, you know, there's a long, slow, sort of gentle incline, and then there's, you know, steeper, about 15% that's probably, you know, at most a minute and a half, 2 minute hill sprint. She goes, yeah, we're going to need longer than that. Okay, so there's one, there's a 3.5 kilometre hill that I can access, but it's, you know, it's a 10-minute drive away sort of thing. So it's, I think I've got some long, slow hill reps ahead of me, which, you know, I'm not at all surprised, but yeah, I just, I think me and hills we're going to end up pretty clear close over the next few weeks. Tired. Puss and buddies. So we're going to have a few words, I think, me and running up hills. So it's but it's a week that, you know, I mean, the wonderful thing was that, you know, she wanted to know what I identify my weaknesses as at before, you know, and then I'm sure that by the end of this training cycle, if not beforehand, she'll have a pretty good idea of what all my other weaknesses might be on top of that, you know, that really just sort of, I know which ones sort of are glaringly obvious or which ones frustrate me, but she'll pick up other ones, I'm sure. So yeah, so it's good, it's exciting, it's new, it's different. So, and just see what happens. I'll be crying in a corner maybe in 2 weeks' time, who knows? But we'll see. I'm sure it'll be good.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, I mean, even like, I think, when was it? I did some run, and I wouldn't exactly say I was struggling up a hill, but it wasn't. I guess it felt harder than what I felt like it should feel.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, oh, you know, like been running like way too much flatness, which is hard not to do in winter, because if I want to go where there are street lights, then it is flat, and there's. Yeah. But I thought, oh, you know, like if I do a bit more of my easy runs around home, where there are a lot, it's not like super hilly, but there's enough, you know, like if I do, you know, like probably like 10Ks around here, then it's probably in the vicinity of like 150 metres of elevation, as opposed to like down in Ballina, it's like 2 metres.
Yeah. So yeah, I just you know, I can do this morning, what was I, not even 3.5K, and I had 100 metres of elevation in that, and that was really only one hill each lap of the park. So there was 2 hills, and it was kind of, I mean, you can't, the only way I can get flat is if I do backwards and forwards on, you know, on a there's about a 1.5 kilometre stretch of path that goes around some playing fields. So, you know, yesterday I ran around some football fields, rugby pitches, but, you know, it's a bit hard. Like, they're not very well kept surfaces, and so, you know, they were about 750 metres around, because there's 2 side by side. And the grass is nice and short and everything, but there's little undulations in the ground, which is great to practice on. Like, I shouldn't avoid that sort of stuff, because trail surfaces are uneven, and sometimes you're running on grass and sometimes you're running on dirt, whatever. So, so that was a surprise. Like, I just wanted to run somewhere in the sun and not have to think too hard about it by the time I got round to it yesterday. But yeah, it's actually quite hard to try and find somewhere that is flat in Goulburn. Even it looks flat, and then you look at the map and you just think, oh, that was 50 metres of elevation going that street. That was not. It's just really sneaky.
Yeah, I mean, and you kind of tend to like remember. Like, I often remember things as more flat than what they are. So like, I don't know how many years I've done it now, but like that run coming up in Lismore at the end of August, and I always kind of think, it's pretty flat, like, other than there's this bit where you go up this very steep hill, but it's very short and you just kind of get to the top and then you run down. Like, it's not a big deal. But then always when I'm running it, I'm like, there are actually some decent hills in this. Like, you just sort of like get amnesia about it. And but yeah, like, I think it's just sort of having both is really good, because I think that I think the negative thing about like running on really pure flatness is that it makes it too comparable. Yeah. Whereas if I'm kind of like running up and down hills around here, then it's kind of like, like this day it'll be, this pace, this day it'll be a lot slower, this day it'll be faster, and it'll just be, like there's sort of just a lot more
you take out the variables and
going on, and also just like having run with streetlights, you just get so like bored of the exact same route
you do, and you need to mix it up. And I think it's the dead flat stuff is really unforgiving on your legs too, isn't it? Like, you need to, when you're running up and down hills, it gives you you might be hard work running up, but you might recruit your glutes more, you might pay more attention to your hamstrings or whatever else, your foot placement, it changes your stride maybe a little bit. And then running downhill, you get to think about a whole different, and you get a little bit of a break before you, and a little bit of momentum carrying forward into the next bit of flat when you come down off the descent. You feel like everything, that bit was a little bit easier than the other bits. But I think it's nice to have a bit of variation. But then if you're training for a flat race, then you still need to get you still need to get your body used to running on a flat surface, because it's really different stress on your body, I think. So there's just no relief.
No. I mean, and I guess like I think the benefit of having done that, like with the difference between the marathon and the half marathon on the Gold Coast, is even though the marathon would be one of the flatter marathons, there is a little bit of up and down, like particularly around like Burleigh and stuff like that. So you kind of like get that little bit of a sense of, even it's just sort of like breaking it up, like, and just being kind of super monotonous to, just sort of like the unfaltering flatness.
And
it does sort of make a difference, I think.
Yeah, especially on that distance when the alternative is just it gets a bit mind numbing. I don't know. That, what was it, that Wangaratta one that Jane did, and that was a really flat course. There was a few sort of variations when you would head down off the road onto the rail trail by the river, but it was really, really, really flat. It was actually quite disorientating, I think, because you'd sort of do a little out and back, and then you come back to the main path, and you'd do another little out and back, and by the time you finish, I had no idea where I
That's how I felt in Canberra. I was like, I had no idea what was going on. We're going back and forth. We're going like off and on freeways. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Like then you're kind of like looping back and you can kind of like get a sense that you are getting towards the end, but like it's just like, I don't know. And I'm like, why is this hill here now?
I know.
At the end. It's no.
Yes. Yeah. No, they do. And because they reversed the course last year, or I think, it used to go in reverse. So, like you always still ran up that hill to start with, up to New Parliament House. But it was. Then you did that bit around Tilapia Park at the beginning, and then over the lake, over the bridge. So it was a bit. It's just for somebody, from the point of view of doing it more than once. I've done it 3 times now. Yeah, it's nice to change direction, although it felt a little bit wrong on the day. I don't know.
I remember, like at one time, like before we moved here, I used to do like most of my loops were sort of like on like more country roads. And at a certain point, I noticed that, like obviously when you're doing a loop, you have a choice to go, like you can go clockwise or anti-clockwise, like that, like it's not going to make a difference. You're doing a loop, you're going to end up back in the same spot. Yeah. But I noticed at a certain point that all of my runs, no matter what, were always clockwise.
Always.
And if I was going like anti-clockwise, it just felt so wrong.
I go anti-clockwise.
And I actually think like when I then went to rehab and we started doing like the oval sprints, and it's actually that preference was also on the oval, which is not what you want on like track, because like on the track you always go anti-clockwise. That's why everyone runs. But I'm stronger going clockwise, and we worked out it's because like one of my obliques is stronger than the other, so that's why it likes to go that way.
It's just your natural preference. Isn't it incredible how your brain you don't even have to have the reason why clear in your mind, but your brain will give you a clear preference. It just this feels wrong, this feels right.
Exactly.
Crazy. So have we got what questions have we got to talk about today?
Let's see. I had it up.
I don't know that I don't feel like I'm au fait enough with the training to hormones and things like that to really talk too much about that kind of
basically
thing.
I think I can go into more detail on that, like on a more sort of informational podcast. I mean, a lot of it is
that might be something good that's just a run club content kind of a video,
because a lot of it is just knowing there are things that you can do to sort of to make the most out of any part of your cycle, obviously. But sometimes just knowing that, okay, like on these days I can just give myself a big ass break because I know that I'm not going to be, it's okay if it feels like crap because
this is where I'm at in my cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's nice having a reason why.
And even with like when I've been doing sort of like custom training plans and stuff like that, or for people in Learn to Run, like even though, like hormonally you're at your peak from the first day that you get your period, you probably don't feel like you're at your peak.
You don't.
Some people have a different reaction. So I have some people who just cannot schedule anything or run anything during that during that week. So they have like a sort of like 3 weeks on, 1 week off type of scenario, just because. And I think it's sort of gotten like it used to be a lot more challenging for me to run on the day of my period, whereas now I find like I just feel so much better. Like I don't always feel like going, but I do, like it helps with like back pain and cramps and stuff. Like I feel better afterwards.
I had a friend who, she said she never used to run on day 2 of her period, and then one day I sent her a message and said, oh, do you want to go for a run? And against her better judgment, she said, yeah, sure, I'm coming. Because day 2 was always her really bad day. And she said actually it had a positive effect on the rest of how she, how she felt for the rest of the day, as well as then day 3 and day 4. And she said, she as long as she's prepared and she knows that it's day 2 and that she needs to, make sure her cup's clean or fresh or whatever, to make sure that if she has extra bleeding that she's safe as far as that's concerned. She doesn't feel self-conscious about that problem, but yeah, for the rest of the day she's like, that was heaps better. It was so now she makes a point of running on day 2 if she can, if she'll sort of push through that discomfort, knowing that it actually makes the rest of the day easier.
And I mean, so it's happened sometimes where I've had my period, I know I have my period, and I've been running and I'll just end up completely bleeding through everything. But
it also releases it helps release things. It helps loosen up your muscles. It gets the blood flowing.
But I just don't get things. I think in the past I would have been more sort of embarrassed about that or something. I mean, in part, I'm sort of not exactly like when I'm running, it's not exactly highly populated. Like how many people would even see me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is one of those things now where I'm like, it's just a period, and 50% of the population get them, and it just,
and they're not an evil thing, they're not something to be embarrassed about.
It's not, it's
absolutely. But I think more for her own personal comfort, it's sort of a that's she's very much the same, but for her own personal comfort, it's much nicer knowing that you've taken the steps to make sure, if it's going to be heavy, that you've taken the appropriate steps to keep things intact.
I mean, and for the most part, I've just gotten into the habit of, like, if I'm running around home, it's sort of like, well, I'm finishing at home, so it doesn't really matter, But if I'm going down to the gym or something like that, then bring spares of things, But for the most part, I'm like, day 2 is my sort of like my grossest day, and then after that I start feeling heaps better, and I think that you can look at like a training plan and look at, like the first 2 weeks of the cycle, like if there's going to be something really hard to do, then that's a good time to do it. And also, you can keep in mind that because like the pill is estrogen and progesterone based, it can mean that you never kind of get that peak period of time, because your hormones are being manipulated essentially. So a lot of people might find that they do better with like an IUD or something like that if they want that kind of thing. So I think a good one to talk about came from Chrissy, which is managing plans around sickness, which I think with everyone having been knocked around so much with sort of like really nasty chest colds and flus, it would be a good one to talk about. And we could probably also talk about, Carolyn wanted to know, where's the line between pushing yourself in training and overtraining, which is like a doozy of a question, but a very good one. So, like, start with the sickness thing. I think you've usually, with a training plan, you're in one of two scenarios. One is that you've got an event at the end of the training plan, and the other one is that you were just doing a training plan to, like, get to the end of the training plan and have improved your fitness. So there's no actual event attached at the end, and that one is obviously a much easier scenario because you get sick, you stop, and then you just pick up wherever you were,
left off.
Unless it's been sort of like more than 3 weeks, in which case you might go back 1 or 2 weeks to sort of ease yourself back in. A lot more curly when
there's a race,
you've got a deadline. So,
and also depending on where you're at in your training cycle when it happens too.
Exactly.
When you getting derailed in the first 4 weeks versus getting derailed at peak training weeks leading into taper.
Yeah. So I think probably the first thing to know is that if you do nothing for 2 weeks, you're not really going to lose any fitness.
Yeah.
But it drops off sharply after that. So once you get into sort of like the 2 to 3 weeks, that's when you're going to start losing some fitness. So that's sort of just good to be aware of in terms of training. Generally speaking, if it's above the neck, then I would continue to run, but I would not do long runs. So by long runs, I mean anything over 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would not do high intensity just because all of those little, there's those little sort of like immune system things.
Your lymph nodes.
That are protecting that nastiness that's in your nose from traveling down into your chest. And if you do something intense or long, they are temporarily compromised for 24 hours, and so the chances of then something going from your head to your chest gets very, very strong.
It's a fine line, isn't it, between pushing through a little head cold and actually landing yourself in the lap of a nasty sort of infection or bronchitis or whatever, because it's the recovery that your body needs after those hard sessions, whether they be high intensity or long runs, stops your body from actually being able to recover from the germs that you've got in the first place that are making you sick. Your body can't do all the things all at once.
Yeah, and it is hard. Like, I think that there are certainly times where, like I generally have a good sense of like, this is something that I can fight off, or this is inevitable and it's happening and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah,
and if it's sort of going to happen anyway, then the crammer in me might attempt to finish
just keep
to
running
get in
until
like one last long run before. And it's not really it's not really anything to do with training. It's more like, okay, well, if I'm getting sick and I'm not going to get to run for a week, I might as well get one in,
get the most of it
for my sanity. But generally, so if I feel like it's like maybe coming on, like I'll start to notice that the glands in my throat are slightly swollen or just like a bit snotty or whatever, then that's the time where I start lots of water, lots of vitamins, lots of sleep. If I have the opportunity to nap and I feel like napping, taking it.
Rest hard.
Not being a hero, and sort of allowing myself to be more of a crap mum during that period of time, like you're having
toasties for dinner,
or like cereal for dinner, or like like whatever it is.
Saying no to the things that take extra effort as well sometimes. So it seems sometimes when you're tired and run down, you have to sometimes you have to say no to the play dates or no to the outings and excursions and whatever, all the activities that kids want to have happen. And it's a little bit the same when you're sick.
Yeah.
isn't it? You just got to prioritise.
Yeah. So, you know, like I think that in the beginning of a training plan, it's really nothing to worry about.
No.
Just recover and just don't worry about trying to catch up on the things that you missed. No. Just jump in.
Once they're missed, they're missed.
At the next thing.
And also ask you, you know, if you're following a training plan that's been written by a coach, if you've got something that's been written for you, ask.
Yeah. I mean,
clarify.
That's usually what...
just ask.
Like I had someone who they had like a few weeks off and they're like, should I just do this? What am I going to do with these long runs coming up? Because most of the other stuff that she could jump back into, but the long runs were like more of a build and she'd missed one and then it was going to be a big jump. And so we just adjusted it. So over sort of 3 to 4 weeks, we sort of like adjusted those numbers so that it would build up to where the original training plan was, but she wasn't jumping in and all of a sudden doing something that's 6 kilometres longer than she's done before because she's missed a few weeks. So generally speaking, if you have someone write a custom training plan for you, then
it's all included.
That would all be included. Just email them and say, what should I do? And it can also just be good to have like that person to say, you know, you say, oh, you know, like I'm sick, blah, 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 just to have a person to agree with you saying like, no, you got to rest. And then you don't feel guilty.
Exactly. And then the decision's taken out of your hand, which is I think probably what most of us struggle with, isn't it? Which we're probably, you know, we always feel like we should be doing more when in fact quite often rest is best.
Yeah. And I mean, when it happens in peak training, less than ideal, but also you got to keep in mind that most training plans will hit that peak distance more than once in your lead up. So, and that's there in part to, you know, because, you know, like you're not going to look, very few people are going to get 12 weeks and not have one thing get in the way of that. Like sometimes you have like a really good period where you aren't sick and you're able to do everything all the time. And, you know, and so I had been very lucky with that up until recently. And because my kids are the age that they are and they're in school and because like I work home and I like have a lot of things in my corner that help with getting sessions done. And because I hadn't been sick in like 9 months or whatever, basically in that period I had not missed a session. But that certainly had not been the norm in the past.
No, in the past.
And then I had sort of like 2 periods of like, I think it was sort of like probably about 3 weeks out from the Gold Coast and I got like a head cold and I was like, right, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to like just let myself get better because like being sick now is okay, but being sick like being for the Gold Coast is not good. And so I rested, felt better, got back into training and then got sick again. Like sometimes it's just, there's just no stopping it. So I would say if it's sort of like 3 weeks out, once you're 3 weeks out, it is far more important to be recovered. You're not achieving anything by running at that point. So if you have to stop 3 weeks out and you are literally just recovering until race day, do that. That's you know, that's all you can do. And any
more than that and you're actually inviting more trouble on race day, I think.
Yeah.
If you push it too hard, if you go before you're ready, before your body says it's all, you know, fully recovered and everything, you're actually inviting trouble into your house, I think. On race day.
You're just going to be so much. You're going to get so much more out of like the recovery than you would out of like any kind of like mediocre running that you're going to get when you're compromised.
And how many people have a break from running, not necessarily because they're sick, but maybe life gets in the way. They might have 2 or 3 weeks off running and they come back and bang, oh my God, I got a PB. How many people do that?
Yeah.
Right? Rest is not a bad thing. Rest is not the enemy. It's
And the amount of people who have like little niggly injuries which stop them from training like 3 to 4 weeks before an event, and then have this like miraculous event, and it's like, you know, like could just be like that thing is what stopped them from overtraining, and then they
thank goodness.
And even with like with doing the marathon on the Gold Coast, and people said, oh, you know, like imagine how well you would have done if you were well. Maybe, like, you know, but
imagine. Do you feel like saying, actually, that was what was it, a 20-minute PB?
25 minutes.
25-minute PB for a marathon.
And I actually think, like, you can look at, like, pretty much, like, the first marathon I did was evenly, like, fairly evenly paced and felt, like, pretty solid the whole way through. And, but since then, nothing has been like that. Everything has been run 30 Ks, oh my God, this is so hard. And just like have that crash and burn that you see in almost everybody's marathon race. Yeah. And this one, like ordinarily on my training runs, I'd probably like on when they're sort of like moderate paced, sort of 30K runs, I would be maintaining kind of like a 5-minute pace.
Yep.
And this, I just went out at like, started at like 5:15, and I felt like this feels, and I know that the first sort of third, like the first 15 Ks has to feel pretty easy, and it didn't feel that easy. It's like,
but you're also sick, you know.
Yeah, and so it's like,
factors,
well, you know, like I feel okay, like this is okay, and you know, we'll just see what happens. And was pretty much able to like maintain that the whole way. And I sort of started cramping up a bit in the last 3Ks or whatever. And I look at it and go, you know, like maybe being sick just like stopped me from being too aggressive in the beginning.
In the first,
and because I would have, like if I'd been well, I probably would have gone out at like my 30K pace. And then who knows, like I might have been able to maintain it for 10 extra Ks, might not have been able to.
You never know, do you?
So, yeah, you don't know. So...
What do they say? You might not win the marathon in the first 5K, but you can certainly lose a marathon in the first 5Ks. You know, by going out too fast, you can shoot yourself in the foot, can't you? So maybe that
there's
that tempered your enthusiasm in the first
it's just
15Ks. So I'm not here to kill myself. I'm just here to get my money's worth.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was reading actually, I should be able to link it up, but there's a good column in Outside magazine, I think it's called like Sweat Science or something, where they go into like some of the recent research, and they did some research on why it is that people do have that drop off that happens in the marathon, and sort of like to do with like part of it is to do with like a lot of it is to do with like your body is capable of a lot, like up until 2 hours
to a certain point,
and then you start getting like a 10% compromise, 20% compromise, and that kind of thing. So you know, like, and that's what makes it so hard to pace, because you feel fine for 2 hours and you feel great, and then all of a sudden
you do this all day. You can't.
And so some of it was sort of to do with fueling, so like that made a big difference, like with carbohydrates. And some of it was just like there's that sort of like that threshold, like if you stay under this pace, then you can kind of like maintain it, but over this pace that you can't. But it's very hard, like in the beginning, to stay under that pace because you feel so good.
You do. I remember saying when Sarah and I ran Melbourne together, and we probably ran the first 25K together, and we had our 5K splits for that first 25K were just bang on. And the only time we ever spoke to each other was, we're running too fast, we need to slow down. But it felt so good. It's like, you know, do you toss up? It's a there's that toss up between it feels good, I know it's going to feel shit later, so do I just hang on to this while it feels good, or do I slow it down, in which case I'm going to be out here for longer because I know it's going to start to feel shit at some point. Do you hang on to it while you've got it, or do you sort of, do you try and temper the effort to try and make it last longer, which might not work? A lot of it depends on your running age and, your training and your mileage and, your speed, and whether you're running a 4-hour marathon or a 5-hour marathon, there's a big difference between the effort involved running, regardless of pace, running for 3.5 hours versus running for 5 hours,
and I think
6 hours or 7 hours.
I think like everyone's like pace that they can manage is different, but I think that generally the kind of consensus is for every second you run too fast in the first half, you're going to lose like about 10 seconds in the second half. And that's certainly like in Melbourne, I think like the first half was, I think, like I think it was like 150.
Yeah.
And that did not go well. And then, so the second half was like more like 220, and that's a classic example of what happens. And there was sort of some cramps and some tummy issues, but a lot of those cramps and tummy issues 100% come from running too fast.
Yes, so, absolutely.
So it's always sort of interesting to. That's why, like, it's one of those things that I'm aware of when I'm talking about like runs or races or how they went, is to not kind of diminish them by saying, I did this but I was sick, or I did this but this wasn't great, because every time it's different, and you really don't know if that helped or if it hindered, because like also like being sick, you just have this huge pressure off. It's like, well, like whatever happens.
Let's just see what happens, because I've been crooked for 2 weeks. Yeah.
And it just mentally puts you in like quite a good position.
Different headspace, doesn't it? So what do we do? What's the best thing? Like you're getting sick at the beginning of the training cycle is no big drama there. No. Getting sick at the end of it is really, that's just extended taper, extended taper.
Yeah.
So what happens when we get sick in those peak weeks? And, say you're 6 weeks out from your event, and you've got your 2 sort of last peak weeks before you're due to taper, and you crash and burn.
I would treat it as like, what I would tend to do is sort of, if it's in there, like obviously at that stage you have enough time to be sick and get better. So I would 100% like not be doing anything and just go like full recovery mode, like
rest,
all of the rest, all of the fluids, all of the vitamins,
whatever drugs you need to take, the cold and flu tablets.
Yeah, do all of the things that that help you. Like one of the big things that always helps me when I'm not well is zinc and vitamin B, which like everybody thinks of vitamin C, but those are 2 that really help me.
Vitamin B is good for you.
And just like lots of water, lots of sleep, all of that's kind of stuff. And things that are just like, oftentimes when you're sick, particularly if you've got kids, it's really hard to eat well, which is where like if you happen to have some things in the freezer, that will help.
It helps.
But there's also like lots that you can do that's super quick, super easy, but still going to be like high in nutrients. So which is sort of like my go-to for like when I'm sick is usually soup, because it's super easy to eat. When I'm sick, like I get easily overwhelmed at the thought of like eating like a meal, it's like, oh, it seems like
preparation,
a lot of work.
yeah.
And so then I kind of default to just having toast, which is fine, but it's not great, you know,
It's
because
not fabulous.
because I'm not getting all of those nutrients that I could do. So whether I'm sort of like making like a pureed soup, which is pretty easy because you're just, you know, chucking in like, you know, potatoes or pumpkin or whatever you're doing and it's blend it up and it's fine. Or if I'm doing like a sort of stock-based or miso-based soup, you just like heat that up, you know, like you roast your spices first, put in your veggies, put in, if you're having meat in there, putting that in, and then it's just super easy to eat. It sort of like feels nice on your throat if your throat's a bit agitated. It's got a decent amount of salt in it, which you probably need.
So the mouth breathing, you know, you do get dehydrated, don't you? Really quickly. You need to drink lots. And
so you're sort of like 5-6 weeks out. I would just go put all of your nervous energy about not running into what you're eating and how you're sleeping. And you know, if somebody says to you, oh, how can I help? Don't get them to come over and like do your washing, like get them to cook you some food.
Prepare food.
Food.
I was going to say that if mum offers to make you dinner, don't say no.
Yeah. And also...
But it is about getting better as fast as you can so you can get back into some training before you taper.
Often you find... I find that I actually... like particularly with a cold as opposed to the flu, like with the flu it's pretty hard to be, you know, like eating and all that sort of stuff. So you're sort of
you're
like
talking
more
about a real flu, you are in bed for a week,
liquid diet situation. But with the cold, I actually find that probably eating more than what I would normally eat really supports that, my metabolism and that process of getting better, because it's obviously having to spend so much energy on fighting off infection. The more I can get in there is better. So so do all of that, and then what I would tend to, it can actually work quite well, because then you kind of, that period you would consider sort of like a little sort of like mini taper. Yeah. And so then maybe at the end, instead of having like a 3-week taper, you move that to a 2-week taper because you've had this little recovery period.
And you can have you can still have one big, a big week before you taper.
And then sort of like build in some more sort of like quality sessions. And how that looks is just going to depend on, you know, like how compromised your system has been, you know, like, because sometimes you're sick and you need to recover, but it hasn't actually been that much of an assault on the system. Like, there's definitely been times where I've been too unwell to run, but I don't actually feel that bad. Like, I'm not in bed, you know, like I'm sort of like doing stuff with the kids, or, you know, like I'm, you know, doing work or whatever, and I feel fine. I just know that I'm not well enough to run. And there are other times where I've like barely been able to get out of bed, and you know, like my mum's had to come like help me get the kids from school because I feel too woozy to go down and get them. And those two things are very different. So, you know, like with me sort of like coming back from this bronchitis, which obviously aggravated the hell out of by running a marathon in the middle of it. So what my coach sort of had is like basically the first week was just like full rest. Yeah. And then the next week I'd sort of like started to get over my the worst, like I wasn't having massive coughing fits anymore. It was sort of like he'd have like, oh, you know, like go and do like 20 minutes on the, like he had put in aqua jogging, and I'm like, does he realise it's winter here? I don't really
no, it's not 30 degrees.
But surely, you know, it's usually like aqua jogging or biking, like something to turn over legs, and then, you know, like go and do like 5k super easy, and then have a rest day, and then the next week sort of like more easy stuff, but like a few more running days. And then this week we've been adding in sort of like 10-second hill sprints and some you know, like 100-meter strides, and just slowly building that in. And so coming back from sickness can kind of work a bit like taper. Like the first week you'd probably do, I tend to kind of look at it like 50% load.
Yeah.
You know, and with strength training too. So,
Yeah.
you know, don't just jump into like with strength training.
You don't just go straight back in.
No, like I do like half the reps, half the weight.
Yeah.
And then the next week you sort of like more at 75%, and then but you can then just sort of assess how you're traveling. And even with that middle one, it's just so much more important to recover than it is to get in that, you know, that extra training session, because you can you can do your race with a lot less training than what you might imagine, but it's just going to be a lot harder if you're still carrying any kind of like fatigue, or you know, if your sort of system is suppressed in any way, then that's going to be,
and then you're going to just crash and burn after your event in a big way, because you are
definitely happened.
You know, your immune system is not firing on all systems, and then the added stress of a race, whether it be racing a half marathon or doing racing a 5K or doing an ultra, the stress that you put on your body for that race, running faster and everything, and usually a bit of sleep deprivation, because no one ever sleeps well the night before. Then if you don't rest up properly, then you are just going to fall in a heap after your event, if you don't let your body
and it can also just take some of the enjoyment out of it too, because then you can go into it feeling like that was really, really hard and I'm not sure if I ever want to do that again. But in reality, if you'd been feeling better, then it would have been a different experience. And I think sometimes too, you do have to say, I'm not running that. You know,
that's
like
what I was just going to say. At some point, you may come across the situation where you have to say, am I going to run that event, or am I just going to count my losses? And it is hard if you've, you know, a lot of time there's financial investment into it. Like it's not cheap, and you might have booked accommodation and paid for your plan, all that sort of stuff. All of that. It's a risk that you take every single time. Yeah,
all of that sort of stuff. So there's been a few that I've skipped, like 1 year.
Yeah, there has, hasn't there?
Has been like I didn't go to Warwick because I was just too sick. And then last weekend I was supposed to go to Jetty, and I just decided that it would just set back my recovery too much, and that it wasn't worth it. And also because that was the week that my mum had the kids, so it was sort of like a perfect week for me to have this really nurturing sort of like recovery week. And I was like, that's not part of it. That's not going to serve me at all. And then, and sometimes you can go, okay, like I'll go and I'm going to run, but it's not going to be a race, or, you know, like, and that was part of my thinking with running the marathon. It seems like slightly crazy, but it was one of those
method to the madness.
One of those things where I wanted I wanted the day to be an experience, and me going and running the half at my easy or moderate pace, like what I did with the marathon. Like I didn't really feel like it would be sort of a, you know, like a good experience for the day, where everyone else is out there sort of like pushing themselves and, you know, sort of like getting to the end of their training. So I was sort of at the point of like, either I don't run and I can just hang out at the finish line and cheer everyone else over, and that was definitely something that I considered, or do the marathon at just what seems like a sustainable pace on the day. And
and it also
obviously
gives you a gauge of, you know, it was an opportunity to sort of see where your training has taken you in the last 12 to 18 months as well.
And I had always wanted to sort of get a sense of, you know, towards the last few marathons that I did, I really didn't enjoy at all.
No, but you did a whole stack that year, didn't you?
And they were all sort of like in between like 5 to 6 hours. Which is hard. Which is hard, yeah. It's like I find once you get over like 4.5 hours, it starts to be pretty tough. And I kind of wanted to get a sense of like, I very much connected with the half marathon as my distance, you know. But when I started doing the half marathon, like my half marathon like time was, you know, sort of like in the, you know, like 2 hour-ish sort of a zone, or got down to the 2 hour sort of zone. And as that's gotten shorter, it's like, well, you know, like maybe I would enjoy the marathon now that's not going to take as long. But I had also not wanted to kind of like fully commit to actually devoting 4 months of my life to find that out either.
To find out that, in fact, no.
And so it was sort of like a good opportunity to go, I think I can go under 4 hours. And, you know, and then I can kind of like see like how I feel about it as a distance, and, you know, like if it is something that I would like to do at some stage, or, you know, like just sort of get a sense of it. And with not a huge amount of impact on like my training, because I knew with being sick I'd be like not be doing anything.
You'd be full in recovery anyway.
You know, like I think that there are ways of looking at what you were going to do on that day if you are unwell. And also often really helps to like just have a you can have a backup plan. So like when I had to
your goals,
pull out of Warwick, I just ended up 3 weeks later doing a half marathon distance on my own. And to just sort of test out where my fitness was. Obviously not as fun as
it's not.
As doing it in an event, and there was no aid stations or anything else, and it had been there had been like gale force winds and torrential rain the day before, so it's like debris and stuff. But you know, like I was really happy with that run. And then it sort of like, for me, sort of like capped off that training cycle, so I didn't feel like it had been a waste. Or the other alternative, which I've had, I know like a few people have looked at with the Gold Coast, where like so many people were sick that have gone, okay, like I did the best that I could with that, but I want to go and really test myself properly when I'm feeling well, and so I've signed up for the Sunshine Coast. There's usually something else.
Usually something, unless you get talking about Melbourne Marathon, which is, you know, sort of the last of the year before you head into sort of summer off season, isn't it? You know, there's not much.
So there's usually it is always unfortunate to sort of like when you've invested a lot of time and money in an event.
But you've also got to think about the long-term effects and potential, you know, sometimes running when you are seriously under the weather can be, you know, it's putting an unnecessary stress on your body, and, you know, you sort of think we're not, you know, you sort of, I come back to the philosophy that we are, you know, for most of us, we're in it for the long haul. We're not just in it for this particular race. There are other events, as you know, there's other fish in the sea. It's so cliche, and, you know, it's not really a comfort, but at the same time, it's running. It's not, it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyable. Yes, it's meant, you know, if you want it to be a challenge, it can be a challenge and all that sort of stuff, but at the risk of your own health.
Yeah, and also it's
not so much.
Sort of like if you're going for, like, that was sort of my other feeling with the half, with it being like at the pace that I would have been hoping to run, be so much more of an impact on my system than doing something at a moderate pace. And I was like,
do you risk injury on top of that?
That in at that intensity, is that worth sort of like putting myself through that kind of an effort where I don't think I'm going to, in my current state, I'm going to be able to do anything better than what I did in Canberra, and have like a huge demand on the system. And I was just like, it's just not worth having that demand when I'm not going to get the outcome that I want out of it. And I think that, you know, like for if I had sort of had that as a plan where it wasn't sort of like, it wasn't a goal sort of like paced run, then that doesn't even come into it. It's like I just run and, you know, like enjoy the Gold Coast awesome atmosphere, because it does have a great atmosphere. But for me, I was kind of looking at that, is it worth like putting myself in that really, really like tough, challenging position for something that is not actually going to improve on what I've already done? And I was like, no, it's not.
No. Yeah.
So
and sometimes, changing the goalposts, changing your ABC goals, you know, going back to falling back from A goals to B goals to C goals or whatever, C goals. The you know, you just got to you know, you've got to be realistic about it, I think, and really take a look at what it is that you're out there to achieve. So and it's going to be a different decision for everybody.
Yeah,
and
you know
what? It's a perfect opportunity to bounce it off with your coach, or, you know, like we do in Run Club, should I run, should I not run? You know, sometimes when you're asking the question, you already know the answer, don't you? Yeah. You just want validation from someone else to make
because the amount of people who I said to, I'm thinking about running the marathon instead of the half, and like I don't think anyone gave me positive feedback about that except possibly you and Joe. Like everyone else was like, that is the worst idea I have ever heard. You're a crazy person. But I was actually, when you know what you want to do, it doesn't actually matter what anyone else said. Like I was sort of, I guess like when I was talking to people about it, I was sort of like getting it outside of my head to kind of like work out how I felt about it. But as with sort of like most, I think the decisions that people make with running, you know what you want to do, and you don't really you know in your heart what you should do, what you want to do, what's calling to you, you know. And if people agree with you, it confirms that, and people disagree with you, then it usually just strengthens your resolve.
Absolutely. And it just makes you realise that your reasons for wanting to do it are actually good and strong for you. And everybody has different validation process, and everybody has a different set of criteria that, you know, of things that float their boat. But, you know, I knew when leading into Oscars at the beginning of the year, you know, I'd entered the 50 at UTA, and I knew that I was going to be doing the 100. It just was a matter of, at UTA, instead of the 50, it was just a matter of making sure I got through Oscars unscathed first. And so that was my own little insurance policy. And but, you know, saying that out loud the first time to people, you know, you go through in your head and you think of all the reasons why you want to do it, and you think about all the things that people are going to say to talk you out of doing it, and it almost it cements it. You know, you either can come up with a really good list of reasons why, or you go, okay, so maybe we should examine that list of reasons why not. You know, it's it'll either cement you in your goals, or it will make you question them, which is never a bad thing, I don't think. You know, you should be clear in your goals as to why you're running a certain event or going a certain distance. You know, it's because when it gets tough out there, you need to know, or the training gets tough, you need to know exactly why you're there. Yeah. You know, I know there's a point in time where most people was like, what am I doing here? What was I thinking? How is this a good idea? And then you go back and you think to yourself, hang on, I wanted this. You know,
I seem to remember I got to like 39 kilometres. I'm like, gee, this is a long way.
42
Like,
Ks is ages.
this
It's such a long
is
way.
3 half marathons.
Yeah.
And but
But
yeah, and
ultimately-
it will sort of also be like, with also being unwell, it will also be sort of like race dependent. Like, I also knew going into the Gold Coast that it was super easy to get off course
Yeah.
and get back to where I needed to be
Yeah.
very, very easily. So very different to, say, a situation like a trail run where there's not a
Yeah.
whole lot of ability to do that,
Yeah.
or something that's like a little bit more like challenging, like a point to point thing like Great Ocean Road, or like
Yeah.
whatever. You know, like, I knew that being like in a city, it's super easy to go off course, catch myself a
Yeah.
tram back to where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And
Or sit and wait till the sweepers come through.
yeah.
Get put on the bus.
And
But,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, and
There's
just
more than, you know, you go into it and sort of knowing your emergency exits, don't you? You know,
Yeah.
you've got your emergency
Exactly.
routes sort of pre-figured out if you get into trouble,
and
which I think is
knowing-
pretty sensible.
knowing that, you know, like, you're probably going to just like heat up a little bit faster. And so, you know, like, even though it wasn't super hot, I was sort of like pouring cups of water on myself and stuff like that as I was going through. And you know, I think it does get easier to manage yourself. Like, the more experience you have with your running, the easier it is to manage those things, and also the easier it is to have confidence that it could work out really well. Like, the amount of training runs I've gone in to do feeling like I might be coming down with something, and then actually had really good runs and going, okay, cool. Whereas in the beginning, it's kind of like easy, like, even if you feel like any slight twinge, to kind of like talk yourself out of it. And then it can just become sort of like a mental block as well. So I think that the more experience you have with just through the course of your training and adversity in your training, how that's going to go, and the more race experience you have as well. Like, the last time I did the marathon at the Gold Coast, like, I was also coming down with something. It's like, I guess it's winter, what are you into? And I just like, I had been up all night with sort of like razor blade sort of like throat stuff, and like I felt kind of woozy at the start line, and I was like, this is not going to go well. And even though it's like one of my slower marathons at like around like the 5 hour mark, that was actually a really good day. I had an awesome day that day. I felt really good the whole way, and I think there possibly is something about, you know, like, going into something not feeling 100% and then just really allowing yourself to run to effort. That sort of like worked for me there.
Your previous expectations.
Yeah, but it also has sort of taught me, like, things can often go a lot better than what you think they will, you know, and that it can be very easy to sort of like talk yourself out of something because, like, oh, I'm not feeling well. And a similar thing happened in Canberra. I felt like I was coming down with something, and I was like doing my warm up, and I was like, it's just nerves, just ignore it, you know, it's a short period of time,
it's just nerves,
you know. And so yeah, it is a bit of a fine line with listening to your body, but also not allowing it to be like, not everything has to be perfect for you to have a great race either.
That's right. And it sort of comes back to the it's better to go in undercooked than overdone, which probably leads on to our next question of the fine line between, you know, overtraining and pushing yourself. But I think you know, you never feel like you've done enough going into a race. So just accepting that it's better to go in slightly underprepared rather than, you know, pushing things, cramming and being overcooked. It's pretty common self-doubt kind of scenario.
Yes.
Not trusting your body to be able to do what you want it to do on the day, I think. So
yeah, and I mean, I think it's like like, I think we might have to save the overtraining
Yeah.
question. Yeah, because I think it's like, where are we?
It's a pretty curly one.
I think it's probably going to take more than if we did that, we'd be in another 3-hour podcast territory possibly. So I'll have to save that for next time, because I think it is worthwhile going into. Are we back?
Still? Yeah.
Yes. Stellar regional
Better go
internet.
Call and yes, and I've had work call twice, so I better go and see what the rest of the world wants. Hopefully got some shifts booked for the weekend.
Yeah.
So no, we can cover that next time.
Yeah. Well, have a good run tomorrow. That's at 9:30.
Yeah, 9:30 tomorrow. It's very civilised. Nice. But it's nice. It's actually a lovely little local event. Super cheap. It's only $30 to enter. Their marathon is only $65. It's very hard to resist. But no, it's to get such a cheap marathon when you think how much they cost.
Yeah, even the Lismore one, when I entered that.
It's
the Lismore one, the half is like $50. It's felt like a bargain. Yeah. It's like the local ones are good that way, and because they're not like closing any roads or any of that kind of thing, like most of that money goes to charity, because they don't have
to the organisation.
Deal with like a lot of the logistics that they would have in a big city one.
Yeah, for sure. Their road management plans and things like that don't have to be taken into account. This one's run by the Australian Mountain Running Association, and it's the start and finish line is about 1.5 kilometres from my parents' place, and so easy access to coffee and showers, and it's so I've run around there a fair bit. There's some new trails that that are part of this course that I haven't done before, which will be nice to sort of. It's not always nice when you run by yourself to actually know where the trails go. Makes me feel so much safer if I actually know where it's going to go. Especially because if I'm running them during the week, they're not very well populated. You might only come across one person in an hour, and that's a busy day. So it's sort of nice to know without too much sort of, do I turn around now? I don't know how much further this is going to go. How much time have I got? This will be a nice way to find a few more trails to explore around there and make a bit more fun. So and I'm doing it with a friend, which is awesome. So she's decided to do her first 50k ultra at the Human Hovel down at Tumbarumba in October, and she's asked me to write a plan for her, so I'm going to do that. So she bought a book. She bought a book about running your first ultra, and she it's supposed to be a 6-month sort of build for it, and she's jumped in at week 12, and she was supposed to do an 18-mile long run last weekend, and I said, I don't think that's a really good idea. So when she parted, she'd done 8 in the morning and then joined me for 5 in the afternoon. I said, well, good luck with that. Good luck with the other 13k, 14k that you've got to run today. So so she's joining me tomorrow. So that'll be her long run, and quite honestly, tomorrow 16k. That's the longest I've run since UTA. So
yeah, I've got Sunday 16k is my long run as well, and it's amazing how quickly that feels like a long run. Like even doing I had a few 12k runs this week, and I'm like, gee, that's a fair way, isn't it?
I know.
And not that long ago, like my long run would be like 30, and now I'm like, gee, that's a fair way.
Yeah.
That's a lot
different. You want me to run how far?
From just sitting around on my couch.
I know, right? Can I take my blankie? That'll make me feel safer. No, it'll be lovely. It'll be awesome, and it's actually I think nice running weather. It's nice and cool. It'll probably be about 4 degrees to start with, and then and not windy and just overcast. So yeah, it should be nice. Yeah. Be lovely, and lots of other like-minded folk out there doing it too.
Yeah.
So that's all cool. All right then.
All right.
We can adjourn until next time.
Definitely.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Thank you for hanging out with us this week. That's it for this week. If you have a question that you would like answered on the podcast, feel free to let me know. Always happy to include those. In about 3 weeks on the 2nd of September, Learn to Run starts. So if you would like to jump in on that, at the moment, from now on anyway, Learn to Run will be happening in September, in January, and then in May. So those are the only 3 times through the year that it will be running. So registrations are open now, and if you sign up now, then you get access to the Facebook group, and you can start doing all of the preparation stuff to sort of start cementing in some of those habits before we officially kick off. And as I've said in the newsletter this week, there are a few changes to the Learn to Run program, and a big part of that is lifetime access. So now when you sign up, if it takes you a bit longer than 12 weeks to finish it, you have that ongoing support, and you have a support group that is active and available all the time. And if you ever want to redo the program, or if you did it at a beginner level and you want to go through and redo it as an intermediate or as advanced, you can do it in your own time, or you can jump in on any of the official rounds of Learn to Run as they kick off on those dates too. So it gives everyone a few more options for that. So yeah, I will link that up, and I'll speak to you next week.